Zikatal stared at his reflection in the polished metal surface of his locker. His four slender arms hung limply at his sides, and the blue-green scales covering his body seemed duller than usual. Even the natural bioluminescent patterns that ran down his neck and arms barely flickered. Today was going to be another long day at Galactic Unity Academy. The massive space station that housed the Academy orbited the neutral planet Nexus Prime. It was built as a symbol of cooperation between the 12 major species of the Galactic Council. Its curved hallways and vast domes were filled with students from across the galaxy, all sent to learn together in harmony. At least, that was the idea. Zikatal took a deep breath and pressed his hand against the scanner. His locker slid open with a soft hiss. He quickly grabbed his data tablets for his morning classes and closed it before anyone could walk by. He was already late for breakfast, but that was by design. The cafeteria would be almost empty now, which meant fewer chances to be noticed, fewer chances to be the target of jokes and pranks. As Zikatal made his way through the wide corridor, other students passed by in groups, laughing and talking. Nobody acknowledged him. A group of Eltarian girls with their characteristic silver skin glanced his way, then quickly looked away, whispering behind their hands. He had learned to become invisible, or at least he tried to. "Hey, forearms, catch!" Zikatal flinched as something flew at his head. Despite himself, his natural reflexes kicked in, and two of his arms shot up to catch what turned out to be a rotten fruit from the agricultural lab. The sticky purple juice burst over his hands, staining his scales. Krevnox, a tall Taurian with gleaming horns and powerful shoulders, stood with his friends, all laughing. Taurians were known for their physical strength and social dominance, and Krevnox embodied those traits fully. "Good catch. I guess having twice as many arms as everyone else is good for something," Krevnox said, his voice carrying down the hallway. Zikatal said nothing. He never did. He simply used his lower set of arms to pull out a cleaning cloth from his bag and wipe off the juice. "What's wrong? Can't you talk?" another Taurian asked, mimicking Zikatal's bioluminescent patterns with exaggerated hand movements. "Oh wait, I forgot. Vexillians are supposed to be so smart, but this one can barely put a sentence together." The group walked away, still laughing. A few other students had stopped to watch, but nobody said anything. A Meridian teacher with flowing tentacles and eyes that shifted color with her mood had seen the whole thing from down the hall. Her eyes flashed briefly yellow, showing concern, but then turned back to a neutral green as she continued on her way. Just another day at the academy. The cafeteria was nearly empty when Zikatal arrived. He grabbed a tray and selected food compatible with Vexillian digestion, mostly fermented plant matter and protein cubes. He sat alone at the far end of a long table, keeping his head down. "Is this seat taken?" Zikatal looked up to see Lara Jones, a Terran exchange student who had arrived last semester. Her brown hair was pulled back and she smiled uncertainly. "No," Zikatal answered quietly. She hesitated, then sat down 2 seats away. Not exactly friendly, but not hostile either. The closest thing to normal interaction he'd had all week. Lara opened her mouth as if to say something, but then her datapad chimed. She checked it, looked across the cafeteria, and quickly gathered her things. "Sorry, my friends are here," she mumbled, not meeting his eyes as she hurried away to join a group of Centaurians and Arcturians at another table. Zikatal returned to his meal. He was used to it. His own people had a saying, "To be different is to be alone." Vexillians were rare in this sector of the galaxy, and his parents were diplomats stationed far from home. They had thought sending him to the academy would be a great opportunity. They didn't know what it was like. After breakfast, Zikatal headed to his favorite class, Advanced Xenobiology. The lab was his sanctuary, where his 4 arms were an advantage, rather than a source of mockery. His natural talent for memorizing complex biological systems made him one of the top students. As he settled at his workstation, Professor Nurai, an elderly Arcturian with pale blue skin and wise eyes, nodded at him. "Your analysis of Terran digestive enzymes was exceptional, Zikatal," she said quietly. "I've rarely seen such thorough work from a third-year student." A warm feeling spread through Zikatal's chest. making his bioluminescent patterns glow brighter, for a moment. Such moments were rare but precious. The feeling didn't last long. As other students filed in, he heard Krevnox's loud voice behind him. Look at him, glowing like a malfunctioning light panel. Someone should turn him off and on again. To fix him, laughter followed. Professor Nurai frowned but said nothing as she prepared for the day's lesson. The class passed in a blur of information that Zikatal absorbed eagerly, focusing on the work rather than the occasional paper ball that hit the back of his head. When the lunch period arrived, he decided to skip it entirely. Instead, he found his way to a small maintenance corridor that ran behind the environmental control systems. It was his secret place, where the hum of machinery drowned out his thoughts and nobody could find him. Sitting with his back against the warm wall of a water reclamation unit, Ziktal pulled out his personal datapad and began writing a message to his parents. He'd been drafting it for days but couldn't find the right words. How could he tell them that he was miserable, that nobody at this prestigious academy would talk to him, that the teachers saw but did nothing, that he spent every day just trying to become invisible? He couldn't. They had worked so hard to get him this opportunity. Their pride when he was accepted had made all four of his arms tingle with happiness. Ziktal deleted the draft and rested his head against the wall, closing his large amber eyes. 5 more months until the term ended. He just had to make it, through 5 more months. As he sat there in the dim light of the maintenance corridor, he didn't know that everything was about to change. That tomorrow, a new student would arrive who would see him when no one else did. For now, though, he was alone, as usual. Just him and the gentle hum of machinery that didn't care how many arms he had or what color his scales were. Ryan Carter stared out the viewport as the transport ship made its final approach to the Galactic Unity Academy. The massive space station grew larger by the second, its gleaming rings and domes catching the light from the nearby star. His heart pounded in his chest. This was really happening. All passengers for Galactic Unity Academy, prepare for docking, announced a calm voice over the speakers. Ryan double-checked his uniform, dark blue with silver trim, the colors of Earth's newly formed Space Education Initiative. He was the first human student ever admitted to the academy, a fact that made him both proud and terrified. You'll do great, his father had told him before he left Earth. Remember, you're not just representing yourself, you're representing all of humanity. No pressure there, Ryan thought with a nervous smile. The ship docked with a slight bump, and Ryan grabbed his bag. He had packed light, mostly clothes, some personal items, and a few books from Earth. Real paper books were rare these days, but his grandmother had insisted he take them. Show them humans still appreciate the old ways, she had said. As Ryan stepped through the airlock into the station, he was met by a tall, elegant alien with pink skin that seemed to shimmer in the light. She had 2 pairs of eyes, one large pair on her face and a smaller pair just above. Welcome to Galactic Unity Academy. I am Administrator Quelna, she said, her voice melodic and precise. You must be Ryan Carter of Earth? Yes, ma'am, Ryan replied, trying not to stare at her. 4 eyes. Thank you for the welcome. You are the first of your species to attend our institution, she said, leading him down a wide corridor. The council is most interested in how you adjust. Students of various species passed by, many stopping to look at Ryan. He heard whispers and saw pointing fingers. Humans were still new to the galactic community, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 15 years ago. Earth was granted one placement as a gesture of goodwill, Administrator Quelna continued. Your academic scores were impressive, but be aware that our standards are high. Ryan nodded, taking in the sights around him. Some aliens looked almost human, while others were wildly different, some with multiple limbs, others floating rather than walking, and one that appeared to be made entirely of a gel-like substance. Your room is in Sector 7 with other mid-cycle students, the administrator said, stopping at a door. Your schedule has been loaded to your academy datapad, which you'll find inside. Classes begin tomorrow. With that, she turned and glided away, leaving Ryan alone. He took a deep breath and placed his hand on the scanner by the door. It slid open to reveal a small but comfortable room with a bed, desk, and storage units. A sleek data pad sat on the desk, glowing softly. Ryan picked it up and saw his name and Earth's flag displayed on the screen. He was really here, over 20 light-years from home. After unpacking his few belongings, Ryan decided to explore. The academy was enormous, with different sections for classrooms, living quarters, recreation areas, and gardens that contained plants from hundreds of worlds. In one of these gardens, Ryan sat on a bench, watching the strange flowers that seemed to follow the movement of people walking by. He was lost in thought when someone sat down heavily next to him. "So you're the human," said a deep voice. Ryan turned to see a large alien with reddish-brown skin and small horns protruding from his forehead. His muscular build made him look intimidating, but his expression seemed friendly enough. "Yes, I'm Ryan Carter," he said, extending his hand before remembering that not all species shook hands. The alien looked at Ryan's outstretched hand curiously before bumping it with his fist. "I am Krevnox of Taurus Prime," he said. "I've never met a human before. You look weaker than I expected." Ryan wasn't sure if this was an insult or just an observation. "We make up for it in other ways," he said carefully. "I'm sure," Krevnox replied with a laugh. "Listen, if you want to survive here, you should know who to hang out with. My friends. And I can show you around." Before Ryan could answer, a group of students entered the garden. Among them was a slender alien with 4 arms and blue-green scales. The alien kept his head down and seemed to be trying to avoid notice. "Watch this," Krevnox said, standing up. He picked up a small stone and flicked it with surprising accuracy, hitting the 4-armed alien in the back of the head. The alien flinched but didn't turn around. He just quickened his pace and left the garden. "What was that for?" Ryan asked, surprised by the sudden hostility. "That's just Ziktal," Krevnox said dismissively. "Vexillian weirdo, thinks he's smarter than everyone else." Ryan frowned. "Did he do something to you?" "He exists," Krevnox said with a shrug. "Come on, I'll introduce you to people worth knowing." Ryan hesitated, then stood up. "I think I'll explore on my own for now, but thanks." Krevnox's friendly demeanor cooled slightly. "Suit yourself, human. Offer stands if you change your mind." And though the Taurian walked away, Ryan thought about what he had just witnessed. It reminded him too much of bullying he'd seen back on Earth. Some things, it seemed, were universal. The next morning, Ryan attended his first class, interspecies communication. He found a seat near the middle of the room and tried not to feel like every eye was on him, though many were. The teacher, a tall being with translucent skin through which Ryan could see multiple organs pulsing gently, introduced herself as Professor Lind. "Today we welcome our first human student," she said, nodding toward Ryan. "Perhaps you would like to introduce yourself?" Ryan stood up, feeling his face grow warm. "I'm Ryan Carter from Earth. It's an honor to be here, and I'm looking forward to learning from all of you." As he sat down, he noticed the 4-armed alien, Ziktal, sitting alone in the back corner. Their eyes met briefly before Ziktal looked away quickly. During the class exercise, students were paired to practice basic greeting customs from different cultures. Ryan was paired with a friendly Arcturian named Dex, who showed him their traditional greeting of touching foreheads. Ryan noticed that no one had chosen to pair with Ziktal, who worked alone, practicing greetings with a holographic partner. After class, as students filed out, Ryan saw Krevnox and his friends surround Ziktal in the hallway. They weren't touching him, but they blocked his path, laughing as he tried to get by. A teacher walked past and said nothing. Ryan felt a familiar knot in his stomach, the same knot he'd felt years ago when he watched his best friend get picked on for being different. Back then, he had been too scared to help. He had regretted it ever since. As he watched Ziktal finally escape the group and hurry away, Ryan made a decision. Maybe he wasn't just representing humanity by getting good grades. Maybe it was also about showing what humans stood for. Tomorrow, he would talk to Ziktal. The academy library was a massive circular room with shelves stretching from floor to ceiling. Holographic displays floated in the air, showing the location of different subjects. Ryan had spent half an hour just figuring out how to search for information. It was his third day at the academy, and he had decided the library would be the best place to find Ziktal. His guess proved correct. The Vexillian sat alone at a table in the far corner, surrounded by data tablets and holographic displays of complex biological systems. Ryan took a deep breath and walked over. "Is this seat taken?" he asked, pointing to the chair across from Ziktal. All four of Ziktal's arms froze in mid-motion. He looked up with wide amber eyes, clearly surprised that anyone would want to sit with him. "No," he replied quietly, his voice slightly musical. Ryan sat down and smiled. "I'm Ryan Carter from Earth." "I know who you are," Ziktal said, looking back down at his work. "Everyone knows. You're the first human student." "And you're Ziktal, right?" Ryan said, trying to keep the conversation going. Ziktal nodded, still not making eye contact. One of his lower arms reached for a tablet, while an upper arm adjusted. A holographic display. Ryan was fascinated by how smoothly he coordinated all four limbs. "What are you working on?" Ryan asked, genuinely curious. Ziktal hesitated as if expecting a trick. "Advanced Xenobiology Project. Comparing nervous systems across species." "That sounds interesting," Ryan said. "We only have basic xenobiology courses on Earth. Everything about alien biology is still new to us." For the first time, Ziktal really looked at Ryan. "You're interested in biology?" "I'm interested in everything here," Ryan admitted. "It's all so different from home. But yeah, biology was one of my best subjects." Slowly, Ziktal turned one of his displays toward Ryan. "This is a comparison of neural pathways in 5 different species. See how the Arcturian brain processes information through 3 distinct centers while Taurians use a more linear approach?" Ryan leaned forward, genuinely interested. "And what about humans? Have you studied our brains?" "Human data is limited," Ziktal said, but his voice had gained energy. "Your species joined the Galactic Council recently, but what we know suggests humans have unusual connections between emotional and logical processing centers." Ryan smiled. "That sounds about right. We're not always logical." To his surprise, Ziktal's skin patterns glowed slightly. Ryan would later learn this was the Vexillian equivalent of a smile. They spent the next hour talking about biology, with Ziktal explaining concepts far beyond what Ryan had learned on Earth. Ryan noticed that the more they talked about science, the more confident Ziktal became, using all 4 arms to gesture excitedly. "You're really good at explaining this stuff," Ryan said as they finished discussing cellular adaptation. "I understand it much better now." Ziktal's skin patterns glowed brighter. "Thank you. I enjoy studying life systems. Maybe you could help me catch up with some of the advanced material," Ryan suggested. "And I could help you with, I don't know, Earth stuff, human customs." Ziktal tilted his head. "Why would you want my help? And why would I need to learn human customs?" "Well, I'm new here and falling behind in some classes," Ryan explained honestly. "And knowing about humans might be useful someday. We're part of the galactic community now." What Ryan didn't say was that he'd noticed how Ziktal struggled with social interactions. Maybe understanding humans, who were more direct than many species, could help him. "I suppose that would be acceptable," Ziktal said formally, but his glowing pattern suggested he was pleased. As they gathered their things to leave, Ryan asked, "Why do you let Krevnox and his friends treat you that way?" The glow immediately faded from Ziktal's skin. "What way?" "You know, pushing you around, throwing things at you." Ziktal's 4 arms moved in what Ryan would later recognize as an uncomfortable gesture. "It is not wise to challenge Taurians. They are physically stronger and socially dominant. In Vexillian culture, we learn to adapt rather than confront." Ryan frowned. "But it's not right." "Right and wrong are cultural concepts," Ziktal said quietly. "Here, the cultural norm is established by the dominant groups. I am outside that norm." Before Ryan could respond, a group of students entered the library. Among them was Krevnox. The Taurian noticed Ryan and Ziktal together and narrowed his eyes. "Looks like the human found a friend," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. "Birds of a feather, right? Or should I say freaks of a feather?" Several students laughed. Ryan felt his face grow hot with anger, but he remembered what Ziktal had said about not challenging Taurians. "Come on," he said to Ziktal. "Let's go somewhere else." As they left the library, Ryan noticed Ziktal walking with his head lowered and arms tucked close to his body, trying to appear smaller. "Do you have any place you like to go to get away from everyone?" Ryan asked. Ziktal hesitated, then nodded. "Follow me." He led Ryan through a series of less-traveled corridors until they reached a small maintenance door. Ziktal pressed his hand against the scanner, and the door slid open to reveal a narrow passageway behind the main systems of the station. "I discovered this place during my first week," Ziktal explained as they walked. "Maintenance crews rarely come here." The passage opened into a small space with a viewport overlooking the stars. The gentle hum of machinery created a soothing background noise. "This is nice," Ryan said, sitting down against the wall. "Peaceful." Ziktal settled beside him, careful to keep some distance between them. "Why are you being kind to me?" "What do you want?" The directness of the question surprised Ryan. "Not everyone has an agenda, Ziktal. Sometimes people just want to be friends." "I have observed that is rarely true," Ziktal replied, "especially across species." Ryan thought about this. Maybe that's something humans can teach the galaxy. We're pretty good at making friends with anyone. Ziktal's skin glowed faintly. "Perhaps. Your species is, unpredictable." "I'll take that as a compliment," Ryan said with a smile. As they sat together watching the stars, Ryan realized he'd made his first real friend at the academy, and it wasn't at all who he'd expected. 1 week had passed since Ryan and Ziktal first talked in the library. They had fallen into a routine of studying together after classes. Ryan learned about advanced xenobiology, while Ziktal learned about Earth cultures and human expressions. "So, when humans say break a leg, they actually mean good luck?" Ziktal asked as they walked toward the science lab. "That makes no logical sense." "That's humans for you," Ryan laughed. "We're full of weird sayings." Ryan had noticed small changes in Ziktal over the past week. The Vexillian stood a little straighter now, and his skin patterns glowed more often. He still kept his distance from other students, but with Ryan, he was becoming more relaxed. Other students had noticed their friendship too. Some were curious, asking Ryan questions about Earth when Ziktal wasn't around. A few even nodded at Ziktal in the hallways now. Small changes, but changes nonetheless. Not everyone was happy about it, though. Krevnox and his friends had started giving Ryan the same cold treatment they gave Ziktal. Ryan didn't care. He'd faced bullies before. As they rounded a corner toward the lab, Ryan heard familiar laughter. Krevnox and 3 of his friends stood blocking the hallway. When they saw Ryan and Ziktal, their laughter grew louder. "Well, if it isn't the four-armed freak and his pet human," Krevnox said, crossing his muscular arms. "Going somewhere?" Ryan felt Ziktal tense beside him. "We're going to class," Ryan said calmly. "Excuse us." He tried to lead Ziktal around the group, but one of Krevnox's friends, a tall Taurian named Gorv, stepped into their path. "I'm curious," Krevnox said, ignoring Ryan's attempt to leave. "What do humans and Vexillians have in common? You're both weak, I guess." "Move, please," Ryan said firmly. Krevnox smiled, showing teeth that reminded Ryan of a predator. "Make me." Ryan had been thinking about this moment since he first saw Ziktal being bullied. He had considered different approaches. Fighting wasn't an option. Taurians were 3 times stronger than humans. Authority figures hadn't helped so far. So Ryan chose a third option. "You know what humans and Vexillians have in common, Krevnox?" Ryan asked, taking a step forward. "We're both smarter than you." The hallway went quiet. No one spoke to Krevnox that way. "What did you say?" Krevnox asked, his voice dangerously low. "You heard me," Ryan continued, keeping his voice steady, despite his racing heart. "Is bullying the only way you can feel important? That's sad, Zikatal tugged at Ryan's sleeve. "Ryan, don't," he whispered. Krevnox's face darkened with anger. "You don't know anything, human. You've been here, what, a week? You think you understand how things work?" "I understand bullying is the same in any galaxy," Ryan replied. "And it usually means the bully is insecure about something. That did it." Krevnox lunged forward and grabbed Ryan by the front of his uniform, lifting him off the ground with one hand. "Krevnox, stop!" Ziktal cried out, his voice louder than Ryan had ever heard it. "Stay out of this, forearms," Gorv snapped, pushing Ziktal back against the wall. Ryan dangled in Krevnox's grip but didn't struggle. "See? This proves my point," he said, somehow keeping his voice calm. "You can't win with words, so you use force. I'm going to teach you a lesson about respect." Krevnox growled. A small crowd of students had gathered, watching with wide eyes. No one stepped forward to help. "You want respect?" Ryan asked. "Then earn it. Pushing others down doesn't make you tall. It just shows how small you really are." Krevnox slammed Ryan against the wall, knocking the wind out of him. Pain shot through Ryan's back, but he kept his eyes locked on the Taurians. "The funny thing is," Ryan gasped, "on Earth we have a saying, the measure of someone isn't how they treat their equals, but how they treat those with less power." "What does that say? About you, Krevnox?" Something flashed in the Taurian's eyes. Doubt, perhaps, but it quickly hardened again. "Enough philosophy," Krevnox snarled. He pulled back his free hand, forming a fist. What happened next surprised everyone. Ziktal, using all four of his arms, pushed past Gorv and grabbed Krevnox's arm before he could swing. "Let him go," Ziktal said, his voice trembling but determined. His skin patterns were flashing rapidly, a sign of extreme emotion for Vexillians. "You're defending him?" Krevnox looked genuinely shocked. "He's my friend," Ziktal said simply. The hallway had gone completely silent. Even Krevnox seemed at a loss for words. "What is happening here?" A sharp voice cut through the tension. Professor Lind glided toward them, her translucent body pulsing with what appeared to be anger. "Release that student immediately, Krevnox." Krevnox hesitated, then slowly lowered Ryan to the ground. Ryan stumbled slightly, feeling a sharp pain in his side where he had hit the wall. "He started it," Gorv quickly said. "The human insulted us." "I saw enough," Professor Lind said coldly. "All of you, come with me to Administrator Quelna's office, now." As they walked, Ziktal helped support Ryan, who was wincing with each step. "Why did you do that?" Ziktal whispered. "He could have seriously hurt you." "Because it wasn't right," Ryan replied simply. "And someone had to say something." Ziktal's skin glowed softly. "No one has ever stood up for me before." "That's what friends do," Ryan said with a small smile despite the pain. "And you stood up for me too, you know." "I did, didn't I?" Ziktal sounded surprised at himself. In Administrator Quelna's office, Krevnox and his friends gave their version of events, first claiming Ryan had provoked them. When it was Ryan's turn, he spoke calmly about the pattern of bullying he had observed. "Is this true?" Administrator Quelna asked, turning to Ziktal. "Have you been targeted by these students?" Ziktal looked around the room. At Krevnox's glaring face. At Professor Lind's encouraging nod. At Ryan's steady gaze. "Yes," he said finally. "For 2 years now." The administrator's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. "And no one reported this? No teacher noticed?" "They noticed," Ryan said quietly. "They just didn't do anything." A heavy silence filled the room. "I see," Administrator Quelna said at last. "It seems we have more than one problem to address." News spread quickly through the Galactic Unity Academy. By the next day, everyone knew about the human who stood up to Krevnox and the Vexillian who finally spoke up after years of silence. Krevnox and his friends received 3 weeks of detention and were required to attend special sessions on interspecies respect. It wasn't much punishment in Ryan's opinion, but it was a start. More importantly, something had changed in the academy. As Ryan entered the cafeteria for breakfast, he noticed Ziktal sitting at a table that wasn't empty. A female Arcturian student named Nari had joined him. "Mind if we sit here?" Ryan asked, approaching their table. "Please do," Nari said, her blue skin crinkling around her eyes in what Ryan had learned was an Arcturian smile. "I was just telling Zikatal how impressive his xenobiology project is. I never realized Vexillians had such an eye for detail." Zikatal's skin patterns glowed softly with pleasure. "It is a cultural trait," he explained. "We observe before acting." As they ate, another student approached, a quiet Meridian named Lox, who Ryan recognized from his physics class. "Is this seat taken?" Lox asked hesitantly. "It's available," Zikatal replied, using one of his lower arms to pull out the chair. By the end of the meal, their table had 6 students from 5 different species. Ryan noticed how Zikatal gradually became more animated, using all 4 arms to gesture as he explained a complex theory about evolutionary patterns. "You've started something," a voice said as Ryan was leaving the cafeteria. He turned to see Administrator Quell Na standing nearby, her 4 eyes studying him carefully. "I just did what was right," Ryan said. "Sometimes that is all it takes," she replied. "One voice speaking truth can change many minds." She looked past him to where Zikatal was still talking with the other students. "Your actions have caused us to review our policies on student behavior. It seems we have been complacent." The following days, more changes became visible. Teachers began intervening when they saw inappropriate behavior. Some students who had previously ignored Zikatal now greeted him in the hallways. Not everyone changed, of course. Krevnox and his friends still glared whenever they saw Ryan or Zikatal. Some students continued to avoid them. Change took time. "I received a message from the Interspecies Science Council," Zikatal told Ryan one evening, as they studied in their secret spot behind the maintenance corridor. "They are considering my application for their summer research program." "That's amazing," Ryan said, genuinely happy for his friend. "I would not have applied before," Zikatal admitted, his skin pattern shifting to show embarrassment. "I did not believe they would accept a Vexillian." "What changed your mind?" Ryan asked. Zikatal looked at him with all 4 arms perfectly still, a sign of serious reflection among his species. "You did," he said simply. "You showed me that being different doesn't mean being less." Ryan smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest. He had come to the academy hoping to represent humanity well. He never expected to make such a difference in one person's life, or that one person would make such a difference in his.